All right, so I was kind of struggling this morning how I was going to start this presentation out. And I actually asked the staff back at home and here, what should I say? And one was, hey, you should commemorate Ronald Reagan's birthday. And I was like, no, I don't think so. That's not going to work. Another one said, hey, keep your presentation short as possible, like 5 minutes. And that would be Mr. Huberman out in the help desk area. I think he wants to get home really soon. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this fairly short and bring on Leslie's panel after that. So let's go ahead and get started. So our focus in 2012 is dealing with IPv4 depletion and v6 uptake. And there's a lot of things that we're doing, a lot of policies that are being changed, as well as improving the processes that we have in-house. And we're also doing a lot of IPv6 outreach. So if you go out to these various trade shows, you're likely to find ARIN there as well, speaking to various vendors to see where they are with IPv6. See if their hardware supports v6, if their software supports v6, and so on and so forth. And people are starting to wake up now and say, okay, we have to stop really talking about it and start doing it. And we're starting to see that actually happen. We're implementing new policies and services, some of which I'm going to get into in a little bit. We're doing a lot of work on an ARIN Online. ARIN used to be this template-based organization. A lot of people like templates, but the world is going to the web, and so are we. We're doing work on RPKI development, which I'm going to talk about soon. And we have continued participation in internet governance forums. So there's all these organizations that ARIN's involved with, as well as the other regional registries, and dealing with various organizations that actually want to impact policies that could affect the internet. And we've seen some of that with the U.S. government. There's even more that's going on with, say, the ITU that ARIN is aware of, as well as many other organizations that follow these things. One of the first questions that people come up after they find out that I work for ARIN is, oh, we're running out of IPv4 space. How much do we have left? And you can see that we have quite a bit left. There's 5.61/8s available. It doesn't include the quarantine space of space that has been returned to us for non-payment or fraud or other issues. And so you can see that we still have quite a bit of space left within to give out to people. And you can see that we gave out a lot of space early last year, and you can see that after the v4 run out in terms of IANA not having more space to go out to the regional registries, one of the things that actually caused with us within ARIN is it invoked a 3-month needs-based process. So you can come in and only ask for an amount of space for 3 months. And what that actually, what occurred is we had some of the slowest time ever in terms of people asking for v4 space from that time on. And there's now talk about we need to increase the need-based policy back to 24 months of need as opposed to 3 months. Another interesting graph is v6 allocations that are actually been issued. Again, it's also going down. There was this big uptake again after the depletion event that occurred in Miami, and it's just gone down since then. And here's an interesting slide in terms of our members who have v4, and v6. And you can see that v4 is still a predominant share, v4 only is predominant share of our members. And those that have both v4 and v6 is increasing, but not to a great degree. About 1/3 of our members have both v4 and v6. One of the things that we're doing within ARIN is all the policy weenies. I think that's Randy Bush's new term, is working on improving a number of the v6 policies that are available. One of the first ones that we've enabled on their behalf is better v6 allocations for ISPs. And what this actually occurred, what has happened as a result, is now we can give out gargantuan amounts of space, all the way down to or up to a /16. So we can just give out huge amounts of space now based on this new policy. We had to make some engineering changes based on that, which we just went ahead and did about 2 weeks ago. So we're now fully ready for this. Next thing is we standardized V6 IP reassignment and registration requirements, and you can read about that. Here's a number of proposals that are in the last call. And I apologize, I know that people don't like to hear about policies, but it's one of the things that ARIN does. And actually, these things do affect you. What was interesting is this panel on Monday. A lot of the things that, the attention that's going on with the V4 runout is actually, ARIN actually has to work within the policy construct. And if we're going to change how we're going to do business, we really need to change the policies involved as theirs in ARIN as well. So I encourage you guys, if you don't like what you're seeing here, to actually participate in ARIN's meetings. And I'll talk about that at the end. So here you could have, there's actually beyond last call, these actually been approved by the board, that we've had a number of policies actually put out into place. One of the things that's very interesting is the extended last call with ARIN inter-RIR transfers. So this is actually, right now we don't have a mechanism to transfer space from one regional registry to another. There were things done in the past on an ad hoc basis, but that's basically stopped, and now policies are trying to be congealed by the various RIR communities to allow this to occur. You can see that there's more work that's required for compliance, which the lawyers actually want, justified need for transfers, setting transfer need for 24 months, and so on. And we had one abandoned. And you're more than welcome to look at the list at ARIN's website. Public-facing efforts, and here we get back into the engineering, so I'm much more comfortable. And you can see that we've have done a lot of billing work. You can now see your billing contact within ARIN Online. You weren't able to do that before. We're working right now with integration with our payment vendor. So right now the interface between us and actually making payments with ARIN is really awful. And we're trying to make that a more seamless process as well. Lots of mistakes are made in that process right now, and we really need to get that fixed. We have almost all the templates that we have within ARIN, with just one exception, have RESTful interfaces now. So you can actually now automate this, and we're seeing a lot more traffic going towards this. We have a lot more companies that are starting to use this interface as opposed to templates. And that's really cool. Another thing that we have is a specified transfer listing service. So this is for those people who want to buy and sell addresses. It's been operational for over a year. We have different words for buyers or needers, listers, sellers or listers, and brokers, which are called facilitators in this system. And they're all able to find each other and be able to make deals. There's on the site itself, in terms of what's actually issued, is not what's actually going on behind the scenes. There's a lot of people that come to ARIN, and the first thing they say is, I want space. Oh, I need to use the specified transfer listing service to get my space. They don't realize that you can still basically get it from ARIN, that you don't have to go through this buying and selling business that's occurring right now. So most people actually go into that, realize that this is not the right thing. Let me just get my space directly from ARIN and move on. Another thing that's come out of this community is that our IRR needed a lot of work, and we made some changes based on that. We now added better security authorization mechanisms and notification mechanisms put into place. So we're now in line with all the other major IRRs. It's still a sort of a bolt-on. It's not integrated within ARIN systems, so there are some differences, but at some day in the future, we like to actually bring that in line as well. Now I want to talk about value-added security services. These are services that you really need to have, if you want to participate in, you need to have signed an agreement with us. It's called a registration services agreement, or if you're a legacy holder, a legacy RSA. And we have two systems in this state. First one is RPKI, and I'm going to be talking about that quite a bit later. We are the only regional registry that's currently not running RPKI in production. The reason we're not running RPKI in production is we had a number of requirements put on us by the ARIN board to reduce liability. When that occurred, we had to move to a programmable HSM. Has anyone in this room ever tried to program one of these things before? My condolences to you, sir. These HSMs are very trying. Documentation is pretty poor, and for a long time I was calling it the anti-HSM in terms of what actually came out of it. You weren't able to validate it. I guess that made it really secure. But we now have that running. It's actually put us a year behind schedule, and we hope to we anticipate coming out, if everything goes well, second quarter of this year. We have two types of systems that we're going to be deploying. The first one's hosted, where you basically come to ARIN's website. You're going to have some sort of two-factor authentication, so we know beyond your password who you are. You need to have a public-private key combination that is integrated within the user interface. But all of the registration, all the work that goes in with the RPKI is actually hosted at ARIN. The other one is what we call delegated. I'm going to get into the definition of that later, but it allows ISPs to actually do this on their own hosted machines themselves. Finally, we have DNSSEC. This has been fully implemented and operational for almost a year now. It's managed by either RESTful operations or through the user interface, and it's available for those who sign RSA or LRSA. So what I'd like to talk about now is our traffic loads on Whois and Whois RWS. And one of the things that at ARIN 25, which was in April, we had just an incredible amount of traffic actually come towards ARIN. We were seeing traffic that, frankly, I think VeriSign was having a hard time, or wouldn't have seen themselves running Common Net with their Whois servers. And we saw some really strange behavior in terms of people asking for their same IP address that they were coming from. And this was increasing over the last year. And we notified the community about this during that meeting, and it immediately went down. At ARIN 26, which is in September of that year, right before the meeting, we saw this huge spike after a collaboration was announced about OpenID, collaboration between Google and Yahoo. Traffic spiked 300% at that point, and we were really going like, oh, this is amazing, trying to keep up with this traffic. And we were seeing huge amounts of requests asking for who owns the IP address for these particular login providers for Yahoo, AOL, Facebook, and so on. And during the height of this, we were seeing 5,600 queries per second for Whois information during the day. And here you can see the traffic uptick and how this happened. It was fairly dramatic. And it happened over just a couple days. But as soon as we said this, after that meeting, it disappeared. So we were running at about 2,000 queries per second. So what about now? How are things going now? These are old slides. I'm sorry about this. We're actually running at about 700 queries per second now, not 2,000 is what like this slide has. And here you can see our stats on the queries that we have, that we've gone up, and now we have a fairly interesting decrease down, and I'm going to get into that in a little bit. Here you have our V6 traffic. You notice that the legends totally changed, and I didn't put it on the same graph as a V4 address space because you wouldn't be able to see it because it's flatlined. V6 traffic is Whois queries going over our V6 interfaces is a fraction of a % of what we see over our V4 interfaces. And boy, there was more slides I was going to show you. Oh well. One of the things that, I'll just speak to it, one of the things that we have is a RESTful interface for Whois information, and it is currently seeing as much traffic as our port 43 traffic off the traditional Whois service. And what's interesting about that is that people are actually programming their directory service information using this RESTful interface as opposed to Whois now. And so we've bridged the gap where we're no longer having this traditional Whois service where everybody has Whois clients to ask this information, but people are actually going to the next level and using the RESTful interface, which I think is really cool because we're finally getting to the point of getting rid of this old archaic public directory service and moving on to the next realm. So we have, so in that sense, if you guys are interested in directory services, there's actually some work going on in ITF in dealing with this, and we're involved with various domain registries and so on, actually trying to make this a standardized effort so that we can move beyond Whois. We have 2 upcoming ARIN meetings. One is ARIN, our first meeting is going to be in Vancouver. Registration is open for that, and you're more than welcome to join. And one of the other things I wanted to mention on behalf of our communications department is that we have these smaller groups or meetings that we try to get together in various regions. We're going to have a meeting in Brooklyn for what's called ARIN on the Road on March 6th. Please look at our website if you would like to go ahead and participate. And we're also joining up with NANOG in the fall in Dallas. So are there any questions? So I put you all asleep. This is really good. It wasn't me. It was the party last night, wasn't it? Okay. Oh, Jared has a question.
Jared Mach, News Star. So I was wondering why you used a programmable HSM and what the barriers were in that compared to the other regions who have deployment RPKI solutions that are available to their regions, because that has perhaps set back the industry significantly as a consequence. And I'm wondering why you made that decision and why you ended up there versus perhaps spending a year beating your head against the wall with technology and decided that maybe we should just do what everyone else is doing.
Okay. So our board seemed to be more concerned about liability than perhaps some of the other regional registries. Actually, they were asking us in terms of, okay, you have these concerns, tell us about it, because we didn't consider this ourselves. The 2 things that the board asked for specifically, one was when you went in using the RPKI system to issue a ROA, we didn't know that it came from you, I didn't do it, but it came from you yourself. So we had to put in a basically interface that says, okay, this guy here is issued a ROA, and he signed it, and we have the public key that's associated with that particular user, so we can feel confident that that person has actually signed that ROA, and it's actually integrated within the HSM. The other thing that we did is that we, with the logging side, we actually have signed all our logging events, and there's no way to compromise that as well. So in the case, say I wanted to go in and do some surreptitious activity, I would just erase the logs or do whatever. I can't do that now.
Okay, and you don't believe that the other RPKI regions that are doing this, that you believe that they're deficient in that capability?
All our regions are a little bit different in terms of our constituencies and so on, and all I know is that they.
Jeff didn't set me up, by the way.
Oh, did he? Good for you, Jeff.
Yeah, he did not.
Oh, he didn't. Okay.
He did not. I'm just sort of asking this question because it seems to be a difference between the regions, and usually the RIRs have traditionally, in my mind at least, and maybe that's just in my mind, worked closely together to provide similar type services and collaborate on that. And so I'm kind of curious why the ARIN region is unique in the global internet infrastructure as it relates to that.
Yeah, so this whole thing, thank you, Jared. So actually there's 2 things regarding that. One is that our board actually asked us to do this, so we felt compelled we needed to make that change. The other thing, which is kind of interesting, is in that talk on on Monday morning during that panel, you were starting to be exposed to some of the differences between the regional registries. And actually, Jeff brought that up. So there are differences between the regional registries and how we look at things. We do similar operations, but based on regional differences, there are differences between the operations.
Jeff Houston, APNIC. Yes, like all good brothers and sisters, we scratch each other's eyes out in the dark. We actually went with the Lunar SAHSM. Why? Because we were doing this whole thing based on OpenSSL libraries. Lunar HSM works well with it. There are real limitations in the Lunar SAHSM, including the number of keys you can store. So, for example, in APNIC, when we decided to go down hosting solutions, the hosted key management is a really big issue. Because I can't stuff it all in a Lunar SAHSM because you can't put thousands and thousands of keys in the box. So the engineering actually differs RIR by RIR at this point, because in actual fact I think the profile of the services we're offering are subtly different. You really should be reading very carefully the certificate practice statements issued and published by the RIRs to make sure you understand precisely what our undertakings are, because we have been quite diligent in preparing those CPS statements to accurately describe what we are undertaking to do, and equally, if it's not there, we're probably not undertaking to do it. So look very carefully, and when you're seeing, do I outsource my key requirements with RPKI into a hosted solution, or do I run my own? That's a decision you should think long and hard about in your organisation, because you are outsourcing some pretty critical assets about your control over those numbering resources. If you're a two-man outfit, mum and dad's ISP, you might want to outsource. If you happen to be one of the major telcos on this planet, I think you really want to think very hard about how you actually outsource and how you do stuff in-house. And my recommendation would be, it is honestly your security, you know, deal with it yourself.
Yeah. So to that end, the CPSs that Jeff has mentioned, the ones that I've read were all subtly different. So APNIC has one, RIPE has one, we've generated our own CPS, and they're all frankly a little bit different. So there are differences in the operational sort of aspects of how this is done. One of the things I also want to mention is that all is not lost in the RPKI world as it comes to working in the ARIN region. We do have a pilot that's been out there. The intention was only to have it out there for 6 months. It's been a year and a half. It's running fine. You're more than welcome to join it. It's rpki-pilot@arin.net. Randy's going to come up and say something about that now, because I know he just registered.
So, either Randy or Louis, did you want to?
I'm sorry.
You've been waiting over there for a while. So
Thanks, Michael. Actually, I'll defer to these because I would like to offer an update on the ASO, if possible, just like a 45-second update.
okay.
Randy Bush, IIJ. You've got a web interface to which I'm one of your users.
Yep.
Thank you, by the way. It was
You're welcome.
fun experience, et cetera. But I can put data into it, but since you do not publish the trust anchor, nobody can get data out of it. So I don't know if the data is actually in, other than there's a web interface.
Yep.
I can't use it I can't gather it into a validated cache with relying party software and stuff it up a router to test. So it's like a write-only black hole.
Okay.
And we'd appreciate if you'd give us the second half of the service, just publish the trust anchor.
I hear what you're saying, Randy.
And you're welcome to wrap as many lawyers as you want around it. Enjoy yourself.
Yeah. So to that end, I'd like to talk a little bit what Randy's talking about. He asked for the trust anchor, and I sent the trust anchor to Randy via email. There's one of the other things that happened in this conversation is there's some talk about this trust anchor needs to be acknowledged by those people who plan on validating against that, that they're sort of some liability mitigation put into place. I'm not a lawyer, but that's one of the things that's being bantered about within in our community as well.
Okay. Rüdiger Volk, Deutsche Telekom. Well, okay, that ping pong actually makes me ask, well, okay, in other regions, actually the pilot morphed straightforward into the production service, meaning that the data that people have been playing around with actually are supposed to describe real assets and result in actual filtering. Not all participants actually understood that. The question here is, quite clearly, so far, your pilot has been only sandbox play data, and as you are concerned about liability, is there a clear statement that this will never directly transfer into the real world?
This information actually goes into the pilot. It's intended for people to play with, and as part of the user ID and password that you receive, as part of that text that goes back, the information that you actually play with in there does not get transferred to the production system.
Okay. When will we have a play version for the delegation? And will there be actually a play version?
There's right now. Unfortunately, the slides that were put up here are not the slides that I actually submitted at the end. And one of the things that I had in there was about dealing with RPKI in a little bit greater detail. What we're planning on doing with RPKI is we're initially coming out with a hosted version and putting that in production. Immediately afterwards, we're actually going to be working on the delegated model. There's no plans at this time to actually make a pilot of that. We'll just make it go into production. Now, if you think that we should do otherwise, I'd certainly like to talk to you some more about that.
I would suggest to consider this because, well, okay, people who are going that way quite certainly want to make sure that things really work well. And for that, you want to actually go for corner cases that you do not want to be reflected in real data.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, Louis?
Thank you, Michael. Thanks, Mark. My name's Louis Lee. I'm from Equinix, and I'm also the chair of the ICANN ASO Address Council, ASO being the address supporting organization. Two things primarily we're tasked with is to process global policy proposals and to appoint ICANN board members. Right now, we are active for both items, being that you saw the global policy proposal put up. We are collecting all 5 and qualifying them, putting our own separate independent stamp of approval on that before we pass it on to ICANN board for ratification. The second thing is that we are appointing an ICANN board member at this point. Ray Polzak's term is coming up, and we have 4 candidates right now. If you would go to our website, aso.icann.org, you'll see a link that shows that the 4 candidates are Thomas Eric Bruno Williams, Martin Levy, Bill Manning, and Ray Polzak. So if you know any of them, I urge you to go post your statement of support, and the window closes on April 19th. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thanks to Mark, and thanks Louis and everyone else. Thank you.